Hey everybody, welcome to the Guys Learning Japanese podcast. How's it going, Nick?
It's going good. How are you?
Pretty good. So for today, I would like to continue what we started on our last show. Originally, I think this is what we were planning to do. We were planning to cover a few topics in detail and then basically just answer in Q&A format different questions that listeners or other people that may have asked us in the past about learning Japanese. So do you want to get started?
Sure. Okay. The first question is, uh, how much time should you spend on Anki versus other study methods such as TV shows, anime, or anything else like that?
I only spend about, let's say, 15 minutes a day, average, on Anki. I would like to do more, but I get bored pretty easily. I spend a lot more time watching TV. I might watch an hour to 2 hours of TV a day. Usually not anime, just TV shows like whether it be dramas, news, or kind of like we don't really have these shows in Canada, but in Japan they're called variety, like variety shows. Uh, I yeah, we don't have them in Canada, so I don't really know what they're called in English. Sometimes they're actually really good, and sometimes they're just garbage.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems to depend entirely on the show.
Yeah, which is, I guess, normal. I guess it's the same, with any show. It really depends on the show, not the genre. Yeah, so definitely I spend a lot more time watching TV. How about you?
I think I do probably closer to 50-50, probably more like 40% Anki, 60% other things. And that's getting, I'm moving more towards other things and less towards Anki the more and more and more my Japanese is developing. I I love my Anki decks and everything like that, and I use them a fair bit, but sometimes I just don't feel like it. And so um, like I've said in a previous podcast, I basically, depending on my mood, set my amount of reviews up or down, as well as any new cards that I'll study or anything like that. And so if I really don't feel like studying Anki all that much that day, I'll just set my decks to 10 cards each or something like that, which takes all of half an hour. And then I don't have to worry about it, or probably even less. And then I barely even touch Anki, or I won't touch Anki for the rest of the day, and I'll just concentrate on episodes of TV shows and stuff like that. But I pretty much always have Anki open because I'm always putting in words, or I'm always putting in sentences, inputting sentences, or I'm always doing something with it. Yeah, so I spend quite a lot of time in Anki, but certainly not as much as other study methods.
Mm-hmm. I forgot to mention in mine about reading, like reading books or like playing video games. So I'd like to say maybe I spend a few hours a week on that. How about you? Like video games or like text-heavy video games, text-heavy Japanese video games, or like reading Japanese books or whatever.
I probably spend about maybe 5 hours a week.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, I'm playing Ni no Kuni for the PS3 at the moment, and then that's the main video game I'm playing at the moment, and then I'm reading a kid's book as well. So between those two things, I've got I'm getting quite a lot of reading done.
That's good. Awesome.
So do you want me to move on to the next question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so do you think it's a good idea to chart your progress in Japanese using a spreadsheet or a weekly diary or something similar to that?
Definitely, yeah. I think it creates a lot of pressure. It puts pressure on you to keep up the habit. A few years ago, I had a competition with a few friends who could finish Heisig, remembering the kanji first. And basically, I was aiming for around 10 a day, creating my own mnemonics. But I usually went over. Um, yeah, both of my friends, they quit like at around 300 or so, but I kept going all the way through. And it really it put pressure on me to keep up the habit when I noticed like on certain days like there was a blank, like I didn't add any cards. Like I was doing this on Anki. I was creating the mnemonics on Anki. But like I had it for each day on the calendar, and if there was an empty slot on a day on the calendar, I really I kind of felt bad, like there was some kind of motivation or pressure to fill that spot in. So yeah, I think it's good to have concrete goals.
Yeah, I agree with that. I already do. I have a daily check that I do with a program called Way of Life, which is a habit tracking program, and I mark off whether I did Anki that day or whether I studied. For instance, I'm studying Onyomi at the moment, so whether or not I studied Onyomi that day, and then I also have a blog which is private, which is just for myself to read, and all that's pretty much dot points. And I don't write in it every day, and I wish I wrote it in every week, or wish I could say that I did, but I don't. I write in it probably every 2 weeks or even 3 weeks, but it basically is just an update on what I've been doing recently, as far as what books I've started reading and what episodes of a TV show I've been watching, and any particular thoughts that I have on it at that point, if they seem pertinent. And yeah, I normally find that if I feel disappointed about something, like I gave up on a book and I feel negative about that, or I don't feel like I'm getting enough reading, normally I find that by charting my progress, I notice that although I'm not reading as much, I'm watching a lot of a TV show, or I've been studying a lot in Anki or something like that, so it normally kind of balances out in some way or another. Yeah, and so I found that to be a really useful reason to keep on writing a blog, because it helps me to see things, see the way that things are more. I can see the trend of my interests as they peak and die off and everything like that.
Hmm. I used to do a lot of posting in Japanese before on the Japanese social networking service Mixi. I used to do that a lot back in the day, and it's really interesting to look back on the level that you had in the past. Like, you can see, for example, mistakes that you made or how low your level was. Like, simple ideas. You couldn't really express anything in a clear or complicated manner.
Yeah, yeah. I also just think it's a good way to record, you know, what will probably become monumental moments for you, like the day that you finished Hasig, or the day that you read your first book, or the day that you did all these other things like that. I'm glad that I have a written record of that and the feelings that I had during that moment.
That's cool. You should do a vlog on it.
Yeah. So do you want to move on to the next question?
Yeah.
Um, should I learn keigo?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I would love to be able to speak keigo personally, but I would also love to be able to speak samurai, and I'd also love to be able to speak like someone from Fukuoka Prefecture. Uh, but I have a series of goals that I want to reach, and being able to fluently speak keigo is pretty far off for me at this point. I think at the same time though, it's very, very important to be able to understand keigo, but I think that would naturally come through listening. I don't think it's necessarily something you should study specifically. I think that as you're listening, and you'll notice a lot of situations where a character in a TV show will be talking to his boss or something like that, and you'll notice that it will come out during those situations. And I think you'll probably start to pick up on it, or the commonly used ways on keigo's common on how keigo is commonly used. You'll start to pick up on that as you're watching shows and everything. I don't necessarily think it's something that you should get a textbook for or something like that. How about you?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. I think, should you learn it? Yes. Do you have to? No. I think if you're working in the service industry, or if you're planning to work in the service industry, you're going to have to learn keigo. And Japanese people, they all have to do it the same way. Like a lot of different companies, they have training and courses in how to speak properly in keigo. Because a lot of people, like regular junior high, high school students, and even university students, they don't really know how to use keigo properly. So usually when they enter a company, they have to learn. So it all depends on what field you're trying to go into. So if you're working in a factory, or if you're planning to be a farmer, you're probably not going to have to use keigo. It might be useful for you because people do use keigo. Like if you go to a bank and the staff starts to talk to you, they're going to be using keigo. So if you can't understand them, that will obviously cause a problem. But you may not have to be able to speak it. As long as you understand it, I think that's enough.
Yeah, that's right. So do you want to move on to the next question?
Yep.
So some websites place emphasis on looking up new words in a Japanese dictionary and learning to understand the definitions in Japanese. Do you think that's worthwhile?
Depends on your level. If you're a beginner, no, because that's kind of hard. And I guess it also depends on like how abstract the topic is. If the word has like a really long definition, it may be more practical just to look for the English equivalent. Uh, I think ideally you want to be looking up the word in Japanese, but if you don't understand any of the words in the definition, it's not really useful for you. What do you have to say about that?
Um, yeah, I agree with you. Uh, I think that it's important in the very early stages of learning Japanese that you focus on words and then slowly upgrade to sentences, and then start watching a lot of TV shows or anime, and then after you've sort of gotten a little bit familiar with probably quite a few hundred words, then you could probably start trying to transition into a Japanese dictionary that's made for Japanese people. And my
Yeah,
suggestion would
I'm
be
at the
that
point now where I can use a Japanese dictionary. Like I look up definitions online in Japanese because sometimes I think it's just interesting how they explain the definitions of the word. So I actually prefer to use Japanese definitions.
yeah, I do too. I actually use a Japanese dictionary made for primary school kids at the moment. So there's a few benefits to that. One, the example sentences are normally they make a lot of sense. They're very clear and easy to understand. Normally, it doesn't have a lot of extremely abstract or scientific or medical words, which in some ways can be a good thing. Although I would like to eventually know those words, I don't think it's necessary. So probably if it's not in that dictionary, it's probably not really worth knowing for me at this moment. And then also it has furigana above the kanji, which has been useful if I haven't known the reading to a kanji, which that's getting better and better. But for quite a few years there, I didn't know the reading of many kanji, so it was really really useful during that time. And I think it's inevitably going to be hard. I don't really think it's ever easy when you first move into that stage of Japanese dictionaries. I think you just need to stick with it, and you will be probably looking up quite a few words, and you will be cheating, so to speak. You'll just get sick of it and look up the word in English. That will happen quite a few times, I think. But I think the more that you hit your head up against it, it will kind of just eventually just get easier and easier to the point now where you were saying you could look up a word and you'd actually prefer a word. You'd prefer the Japanese definition. I agree. I like the Japanese definition as well. And I normally understand, even if I don't quite understand the word, if it has a synonym or something like that, I'll normally understand the synonym. And or at least from the synonym, I'll get a flavor of what the word is, and then normally that flavor, and then in context with the sentence is that I got the word from. That's normally enough for me to piece it together, and there's that kind of aha moment. Oh, it's that. Of course it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is this an online dictionary or like an app or something?
No, I'm actually using an old-fashioned dictionary.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's smart, but I would highly recommend not doing that. But for some reason, I personally enjoy looking up words in an old-fashioned dictionary, and I like this dictionary so much. If there was a well-known, reputable kids dictionary online, I'd probably be using that. But yeah, I really, really like using this, and I think Japanese people generally take quite a lot of pride. Japanese companies take quite a lot of pride in their dictionaries. If you go into a bookshop, there's normally quite a large section devoted to dictionaries,
Right.
and so I think their dictionaries are quite beautiful as far as their layout and their clarity and the precision of them and everything like that. I think I didn't have as much of respect for dictionaries actually until I came here.
Do you know the name of the dictionary you're using?
I don't.
Okay.
I can
Well,
look it up and get back to you.
well, let's just put it in the notes.
Sure.
Yeah, in the show notes. All right, so do you want to go on to the next question?
Yeah, sure. So I'm pretty good at Japanese, but quite a few people have commented that my Japanese is too girly. Do you have any advice?
This wasn't you speaking. This was the question.
This is the question. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm guessing it's a guy.
Yeah, well, yeah, let's hope so.
Yeah, didn't say anything about that, so. Any advice for girly Japanese? A guy with girly Japanese. Just pay attention to how guys talk. Uh, think about it like in English. Like, English is not as gendered as Japanese, but the way a guy says hello and the way a girl says hello, like, there are some very subtle differences in pronunciation. Like, if a guy, you meet a guy, it's your first time meeting, and he says hello, everyone is going to have some kind of impression already set. Like, oh, well, this guy must be like this. And it's just the way it is. Like, I'm not saying it's negative, but just being conscious of how you speak in Japanese. I think trying to find someone that is similar to your English self and then maybe mimicking them, maybe that's the best way. Uh, it's kind of hard to explain because this is something that as a beginner maybe it's too much to worry about. Maybe it's kind of an intermediate student issue. I think just if you have Japanese guy friends, maybe you could pay them, or I don't know, maybe you could get like a language teacher or like an exchange partner, a guy, and you could tell them, okay, whenever I say something that sounds girly, let me know.
I've got a better idea. You could just ask your friend, your guy friend. You could just say that whenever I say anything that says girly, he's allowed to slap you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. Um, I think it'll be hard to change your speaking habits, but if you take small steps and if you're consistent with it, if someone's helping you correct your habits And then if you're also getting influence from maybe someone on TV or I don't know, like your guy friends, I think that'll be really beneficial. I think this happens for a lot of people though, because I've heard quite a few people talk about this, and I think the issue is, maybe you have a guy, he's got a Japanese girlfriend, and he's learning Japanese only from that girl.
Yep.
So obviously his Japanese is similar to her Japanese.
Yep.
So yeah, what do you have to say?
I've got two things I'd like to say off the top of my head. The first one is watch out for the end of your words or the end of your sentences. Be careful of using net too much. Net is a pretty girly sound, and if you're using it at the end of every sentence, it can sometimes come off as a bit girly or a bit immature. And they're similar with ones like what. Well, I mean, there are plenty of men who use what, but
Yeah, I think that's common in like the Tokai and Kansai region, but it's it's slightly different how like the guys pronounce that quite differently than, let's say, for example, the girls in the region.
Yep.
Like, so yeah, just be careful, just avoid what, don't use it at all.
Yeah, and I think we don't mean what as in the watashi what. We mean what that's at the end of a sentence that's used as an explainer.
Yeah.
And we don't mean a topic marker. And another one. I think it's important to watch your tone as well. If you just like you said, if you just listen to the way that a male speaks, typically men are flatter in the way that they speak, and I don't think you need to worry if you're not fast enough, because often men are faster as well. But I don't think you should worry too much about that. If you can't speak fast, you can't speak fast. I can't speak fast, and I. But I try and watch that I'm not going up and down a lot. I know that my kids often make fun of not often, but sometimes make fun of my Japanese, that it goes up and down too much. Mm-hmm. And I think because they think it sounds like a foreigner speaking a little bit, or it can also sound a bit girly if you're going up and down a lot. I think men tend to speak in a sort of flatter, more direct, straight away.
Yeah. Yeah, I think another good way to put it is colder. Men are often a lot colder in the way they speak. Like the tone is flatter, the feel is a bit colder. And yeah, everything is just like a little notch down from the way women talk, I think. Women are a lot more friendly, they're more expressive, and they probably talk a bit more than guys in general. I think guys usually have less to say.
Yeah. I think ultimately, though, if I could make one more comment on it, it's that you probably shouldn't worry about it too much. I mean, I personally think that it's something that will get ironed out over time, and not only will it get ironed out over time, I also I tend to think, okay, as long as the message is getting through. I mean, I know that you want the message to be said in the best possible way, but language is hard, and if the message is getting through and your message is being understood, then you've won the war, you've won the battle, and so you probably shouldn't worry too much about if it's girly or not, really.
Yeah, I think it's not something to worry about too much. Just try and mimic the guys that are around you. And if there are no guys around you, maybe that's the problem.
Yep. Yeah. So do you want to move on to the next question?
Sure.
Okay, so how important is it to set goals? This is a big one. And what should those goals look like?
I think you should start on this one.
Okay. I personally think that the goal should be clearly attainable. I think something that I did for a long time is I would have things like read a book, and my goal is to learn all the kanji, and that's just one little tiny sentence, but that goal will take a year or 2 years or a year and a half. Or if it's reading a book, it might take weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks to do. And I just think that rather than writing that, I think people get a bit of satisfaction out of you know out of striking through the things that they've already accomplished, and or clicking that they're done if it's on a computer program or whatever. And I think that it doesn't really matter if it's a huge goal or if it's a small goal. You still get almost the same amount of satisfaction out of clicking it through. So you might as well just have it be something like read one page or study 2 kanji or something like that, so that you're clicking it all the time and you get that little kick, that little thing of joy every time you do it. Apart from that, I think that your goals should be extremely specific and never ever ever vague. How about you?
Yeah, that's my main point. Being really specific with it instead of saying something like "get better at Japanese." You should say something like "learn 10 new kanji this week," or it could be maybe like "read this book by this date." And you could also do something like I forget what it's called. The situation where if you fail, you have some kind of penalty, maybe fail shaming or something. So for example, like you could make a post on Facebook or on your blog or whatever, or you could make a deal with one of your friends. You could say, all right, so my goal is to read this book. I want you to check on me, every few days. And, if I fail 4 times or if I haven't accomplished the goal by the end, period, I'm going to give you like $100. So your friend is obviously really stoked because, they can get $100 out of it if you fail. But it also pushes you, it motivates you to succeed because, one, you're not going to accomplish your goal, and two, you're going to, be out of $100.
Yeah. There's a website called Stick. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
I believe it's spelled STIKK. And it's all set up to do exactly that. You basically set someone to donate money to, or you can give it to the website, or you can give it to a charity or whatever, and then it sets up all the stakes and exactly how often you need to report in and all of that sort of stuff. And it's basically a website which is set up exactly to do things like that.
Would you like to share any of your goals, like goals for the near future, uh, or like long-term goals, if that's better?
No, I can share short-term goals. My goal for tonight, if I get time, is to I recently found a website which has fairy tales, and it also has an audio recording of that fairy tale in Japanese. And so I want to read just a small section of one of the fairy tales off that website. It might just be like a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, or it might be a Brothers Grimm fairy tale or something like that. I might read a little bit of Little Red Riding Hood in Japanese or something like that, and just maybe read a few paragraphs of that. And another goal that I have that's a bit more long term, that I'm hoping to have done in the next couple of months, is to finish off. I have about 100 more kanji to review in my onyomi, and I would like to finish reviewing all of those, as in learning those and reviewing those to a feeling that I know them.
Mm-hmm.
How about yourself?
Something that I have on my mind daily is to review Anki. It's a goal to do Anki every day. And if I don't do it for one day, even if it's just a short amount of time, that's okay. But just opening Anki and doing like at least 10 reps or so, that's one of my most minor goals. And another goal that I have is to play an hour of a text-heavy video game at least once a week. It's usually on the weekend that I play it. And currently I'm playing Okami, really hard Japanese. I'm not sure if it's hard for Japanese people. I think it's hard for Japanese people because for me, it's a bit harder than the books that I read and the other stuff that I usually read. So yeah, so those are, I guess I would say, my main goals. And also, I'd like to get some more qualifications in Japanese, not specifically for Japanese language. Yes, JLPT, that's a good qualification. I think, people, if you want some Japanese qualifications, that's a good one to go for. But I mean also getting other qualifications in Japanese, so whether it be like I don't know, it could be like a cooking license, something that you can earn maybe on the weekends if you take like, a few classes a week over the period of a year, you can get some kind of certificate in that skill. It could be like a computer class or a programming class.
Yeah, I've always liked the idea of getting a first aid certificate of some kind.
Yeah, that's a good example. Like doing something like that, getting those kinds of certifications in Japanese, that's something that I have as a long-term goal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What I often do too is because I get a lot of letters in the mail, and the letters are written in often quite difficult Japanese or in Japanese that is tailored specifically, uh, to that kind of language. So, for instance, if it's a bank statement, all of the language on it relates to a bank, obviously, and it has words like statement and withdrawals and interest and other types of words that relate to banks. And so I might, for instance, set a mini task for myself that over the next 25 minutes or something like that, I'm just going to go through this form and I'm just going to underline words and look up words and try and get a sense of everything that's being said on this form. I think if you getting pieces of paper, it's like, oh geez, another piece of paper full of kanji. But if you set it as a mini task like that, it can kind of be fun, especially when you get to the end of it and you feel like you understand it.
And you could also create that into an Anki deck and then review that. And so then the next time you get another bank statement, if you've studied that deck, it's probably going to be a lot easier and quicker to read.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thanks for listening to the Guys Learning Japanese podcast. Send your questions to gljpodcasts@gmail.com. We'll answer your questions on the show.